right. I had to speed things up a little bit, Karen and Lisa, because of the technology, but feel that I kind of covered most things, so we can open it up to conversation, questions.
All right. Yes, we do have questions for you. And I just really want to quickly say again, which we said while we were filling in for you, Mike, just to remind everybody that the next webinar is scheduled for Thursday, February 15th, when Donna Knapp, who is our Curriculum Development Manager here at ITSM Academy, is going to present for us. And her presentation is titled State of IT Service Management and DevOps for 2018. So we hope you'll join us for that as well. Scott had sent in a comment on his registration, Mike, and he said that one of the main issues that he sees arise, particularly in organizations that are starting or adding to their metrics, is the OCM piece. Are they actionable? What do they mean? What do I need to do? He said if they aren't customer-centric, not good. And he wants to know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so as I indicated, and thanks, Scott, for that. What I indicated, throughout is that metrics are there not necessarily to drive behavior, but to be an indicator of behavior, and that really ties to organizational change management, right? They can tell us when people are doing processes, doing the technologies, whether those things are working right. What I was trying to indicate is we don't want to use metrics to punish people. And as I indicated also, to which Scott commented, it's very important to focus on the customer. What are you doing with this information? Are you changing the way that you look at things? Are you improving the value that's being brought by an organization? Or are you simply trying to improve your day-to-day life, right? So looking at that bigger picture and involving people, because Scott's right, in the end, the metrics are just numbers. They're not good, they're not bad, they just are. It's what people do with those and how they react to them. And part of why I kind of did this many years ago and still think about it is because people use that metrics monster, they kind of get inhabited or taken over by that metrics monster, and they use metrics to punish rather than to improve. So.
Thanks, Mike. Jeff has a question on slide 15. And he's saying, I'm not clear on how a steady decline in MTTR from near the UCLA towards the average norm could be viewed as a problem.
So it starts with a definition of what a problem is, right? A problem, remember, is not a good or a bad thing. A problem in ITIL definition is just the answer to why something is happening, right? I always indicate that problem management really only has one trigger, right? And that trigger is the question why. Why is this declining? Is it indicating that we're doing the right things and thus we're heading in the right direction? And the lesson we can learn from that is keep doing the things that we're doing. Or if it's heading in the other direction, are we doing things we're not supposed to be doing? So you've got to remove the connotation around words like incident and problem as being bad, right? An incident isn't bad, a problem isn't bad, they just are. They're situations to improve. And I always say there is no panic mode in service management. There's only room for opportunities for improvement, and that's what we do. So if you can kind of remove that connotation of problems are bad and incidents are bad, and look at it as a problem is the answer to the question why, it's the cause of something, and causes aren't good or bad, they just are, then you can start to learn good lessons that you want to keep doing and you want to instill in other processes, but you could also find things that need to improve. So hopefully that helps, Jeff.
Thanks, Mike. Kelsey has a question. I'm not sure if we have enough information. The question is, for calculating the ROI, what is the average user rate?
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question.
So let's ask, we can ask Kelsey to give us more information on that one.
Yeah, my suggestion also would be to get a hold of the calculator and look at it, and then if there are individual questions that, and maybe, because this is how we improve, when I was with the Academy, this is how we improve the calculator in the first place is we got feedback from people about this, and we can look at maybe how to use that. If you're asking about the average user rate here, that's basically the salary that you're paying for that person. So, or the cost that it's coming, the amount of money that it's being put into it for how much time, how much money they're losing per hour, basically. Right. So if you're paying one of your users $50 to $50 an hour to do X business, and they're down for 15 minutes, well, that's 1/4 of that, or you're losing $12.50 an hour. Hopefully I'm thinking that's what she's looking at.
Yeah, she said that helps. Thank you. And for those of you that want that ROI calculator, Eric put that link in your chat if you want that. And then Hope is looking for some assistance here. She's saying that, she says, how do I get my manager to quit trying to improve a metric that is working to begin working on another new metric? She'd welcome any verbiage that could help direct that type of dialogue.
Yeah, so a couple things there. One, back to Scott's comment about OCM, is you've got to learn to manage some behavior, right, and talk to the manager about what are they trying to achieve by managing that metric to greater and greater numbers. The other thing that can help are some statistical tools that show that over time, especially the control chart. The control chart can, when used properly, can show that at some point in time you get diminishing returns. It doesn't show it on this picture because I was just trying to show a representation, but what should happen over time is the top and bottom control limits should get tighter and tighter towards the average, and you should, by making improvements, have fewer and fewer variations outside those lines. So at some point in time down the road, you should be able to show someone like that the more money you put into that, you're not gaining any improvements. All you're doing is maintaining things. And so by using some measurements and metrics in that way, you can show them that the effort is not returning very good juice, right? So they're squeezing harder and harder, but they've already got the best juice that they can.
And thank you, Mike. And Mark had said that in Clark County, they recently implemented a new IT service management solution, having implemented the ServiceNow tool, and they produced some initial metrics on incidents and problems and changes and requests, and they're trying to determine what information is of significance to senior management. So what advice do you have for him for that?
So a couple things. First, as I indicated, a tool like ServiceNow can give you more data than you could ever want to look at. So you've got to be choiceful as to what you're looking at. And how you make those choices is not by starting with the tool, but going to your customer and senior management and asking them, what is it that you want to see? What is it that you're trying to do? Are you trying to improve financials? Are you trying to reduce downtime? Are you trying to improve the reputation of the organization? You got to get to their outcomes. And from those outcomes, or those desires or requirements or stories or whatever you want to call them, that then tells you what in the tool you need to go look at. So if someone is not interested in reducing downtime, don't go look at downtime. Right? If they're more interested in customer satisfaction, then what you want to do is pull the type of information that tells you whether customers are satisfied or not satisfied. So there's nothing that says you have to go out and look at mean time to restore or mean time between system incidents. ITIL has pages and pages and pages, and there are other books. Randy Steinberg has a whole book on metrics that tell you various types of metrics and what they can be used for. So those might also be some places to start, is going and looking within ITIL at the KPIs and the CSFs, and then looking at a book like Randy's Metrics for ITIL, or ITSM, I think it's called, and looking at what some suggestions are from those experts, but also, like I said, start with what is it that they want to see? What are they doing? What are their outcomes that they're trying to achieve?
And Jeff made a comment to that also, Mike. He said it sounds just like Six Sigma getting an ever tighter Sigma.
Yes, and in fact, that's a lot of what this is. So the control chart is really one of the Six Sigma tools. It's also one of the 7 quality tools. now his brain, not my brain, Ishikawa indicated, one of the Ishikawas indicated that there are 7 basic tools that you can use to manage everything, and this is one of them. Histograms are another, scatter diagrams. So you might want to investigate that. That's part of the CPDE curriculum. You can pick up Donna Knapp's book on process design. It has a whole chapter on these things. But yes, it is very much along the lines of using Six Sigma. And the way that you calculate the upper and lower control limits are the sigmas. So in this case, I think I used 2 standard deviations. But you could set it at 1.5, you could set it at 3, you could set it at 0.5. How much variation do you want to deal with?
Right. Thanks, Mike. Greg has a question, and Greg's saying, aren't internal metrics needed first to stabilize your process? As Deming said, you can make systematic customer-focused improvements if your system of production is unstable and out of control. You can't make systematic customer-focused improvements.
Yes, that is correct, but to understand which of those metrics are the important ones to try to control, you have to understand what the outcome of that process is first. And then that's part of what I was just indicating to the other question, is understanding what someone's going to use the output of that process for, then tells you which aspect of the process to correct. Again, if it's something like mean time to restore that someone, or downtime that someone is focused on, then yes, you want to go look at incident management, and you want to look at the parts of incident management that are, and kind of time out parts of incident management, and see which parts are causing the mean time to restore to increase or to decrease. Instead of focusing on maybe how a ticket is logged, looking at how it's diagnosed. Is there enough knowledge management or knowledge articles in place for that? If someone's not interested in downtime, then you may not want to look at incident management. It may be telling you you need to go look at problem management. It may be telling you you need to go look at technology. So you really have to understand which system is the one to focus on before you can actually improve that system.
Thanks, Mike. I just want to ask Christine. She's in our audience today, listening. I saw your comment, Christine, and then I sent a question back to you. If you could just take a look at that and respond, that would be great. Then we can get anything answered that you have there. Greg has a question. He said, so what class do you recommend that has the title Taming the Metrics Monster?
So he's looking for a course? Was I understanding?
Yes. What class do you recommend the Metrics Monster?
One of the things, like I said, is it's not so much a course, but go look at Donna's book on process design. I think it's chapter 7. And I will say I helped Donna with some of that. So that was my little input. So look at that chapter. It's kind of a tough question because I'm having a hard time pulling particular
I'm trying to think
courses. Yeah.
I'm trying to think too, Mike, like outside of our spectrum. That's a really great question. I'll do a little research. I do know there is a new course coming out early 2018 from the DevOps Institute, which is metrics for DevOps, but just kind of a broader. Yeah, I'm gonna research that, Greg, and we'll get back to you in the follow-up from the webinar. It's a great question.
Appreciate the question. People find that it's hard to stump me, but I was stumped on that one.
That's the real reason I loved that question.
and Donna piped in and said CPDE looks at metrics.
Yes, yeah, CPDE does. Also, I'd look at Six Sigma kind of courses, like as simple as white belt or green belt. They give you a lot of this metric stuff as well.
And Greg's gloating. I stumped the Cardinal.
Yes.
He says he can go home now.
Okay.
And then Jill said Six Sigma low-level course, the CPDE course, and the CSI course would all be useful for Greg.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And Jerry is saying, Jerry had a couple of comments also. She said one of the things that she asks her customers is what are their pain points and where are they hurting? And then how can I measure those pain points and put the customer on an improvement path? So that's how she addresses it.
Exactly. So next time we need a metrics presentation, that you've been volunteered because you understand that's what it's about, right? That's what I meant by outcomes, pain points, achievements. Focus away from the details for a moment and look at the bigger picture. Where are you going? Why are you going there? And then that's what should drive which measures and metrics you really focus on. When you get down to it, there's only about a dozen metrics that you really need to know the true health of an organization once you get mature with a healthy program. And I must put it in plug for CPDE on that too. There is time spent on measurement and metrics program. I didn't include it in this webinar. I have had it in others, but there is a whole 10-step program that leads you through a lot of this as well out of CPDE.
Oh, thanks, Mike. John wants to know, have you ever tried or considered using statistical sampling, perhaps using attributes rather than variable, as a way to measure process performance?
Yeah, and in fact, the control chart you see was at one point in time actual real data done through statistical sampling. I hesitate to kind of bring that out into the general public because you start getting into some real stats geek, stats nerd stuff there. But if you're comfortable with statistical sampling, it's really a good way, especially if you deal with a lot of incidents, a lot of problems, a lot of issues. You don't want to spend your time trying to gather information on tens of thousands. You can do some statistical sampling on attributes or components or those kind of things, and that should give you a view as to where some of the issues are and expand from there.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Eric has also just chatted in the link to the process design guide if anybody's interested in that.
And I sound like a salesperson for this, and I know Lisa said she wasn't selling it. I'm not trying to sell this stuff either, but I'm a result of having gone through and helped with this, and a lot of it really I knew going into CPDE, but coming out of CPDE, it really clarified the importance of all of this and really kind of kickstarted my love of and focus on metrics. So.
Oh, thanks, Mike. Satoshi says, you mentioned taking action. I totally agree. However, many times leadership and management don't consistently own the actions. Any suggestions to ensure actions are owned over time?
Well, a couple things. One, look at the size of the action you're taking. One of the techniques coming out of Japanese quality management and Agile and that is Kaizen, right? Small incremental changes as opposed to trying to boil the ocean or take big changes. So what are the things that are within your control or maybe your team or group's control that you can make small incremental changes and then aggregate the results of those to bring back to upper management to show the importance of these changes. So rather than trying to go convince them to take ownership of something, bring them the facts and the data that you get from the small changes, and then apply some of Scott's OCM techniques management to them. To get them to see that. I love facts because it's hard to argue with facts. You can argue with opinion, but when I show someone a control chart and say, this isn't Mike's opinion that this top problem is out of the norm, this is statistically accurate. It's a fact. It's a cold hard fact that it's out of whack. Right. So by bringing some of that information to them, do some work behind the scenes. Don't try to move the boulder, as it were, kind of go over, under, or around the boulder. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but.
Well, we'll find out. All good information though, Mike. It's, the whole presentation is very thought-provoking for everybody. I mean, how many people use in the poll that we did, how many people have formal metrics and use them, right?
Yeah, that was really, I didn't really mention some of this. So that was really interesting because it went in line with where I think people are. But that's part of the problem, right, is you have to make measurements and metrics a formal part of your day, a formal part of what you're trying to do. I hear it a lot where organizations talk about this sort of plan, build, run. Well, if you know Deming, there's a fourth step, and that is improve, right? So it's not just plan, build, run. It's plan, build, run, and make things better. And the way you make things better is through a formal measurement and metrics program.
Exactly. Jason has a question for you. And his question is, when determining how to measure or which metrics to use in measurements in alignment with process objectives and business IT goals, is it more appropriate to make adjustments to what you are able to measure, or do you pick from metrics that you can currently measure?
I guess it's a balance between the two, right? So you want to be able to gather the data and get the data. And so sometimes if the data is there and available and you know you can use that to influence or make some of these small changes, go with that. But you also want to look at not just going the easy route, as it were, you working with what you can get, but challenge yourself in your organization. Is there information or data out there that no one's looking at that they should be looking at? Right? Again, we all have this tendency to focus on incident, but maybe the issue with incident is not incident. Maybe it's knowledge management. Perhaps what your mean time to restore is not good because you don't have good knowledge management. So metrics should be pointing you either earlier or later in the process life cycle. So yes, focus on some of that incident stuff to help improve incident, but also challenge yourself and look beyond just these core of incident, problem, and change.
Thanks, Mike. And I think Jerry has a comment in here, and I think it relates to the question prior to this one, where how do you get people to be accountable? And her recommendation is make sure that you're tracking the activities, make people accountable, and assign tasks, and ensure there are deliverable dates. You can have a CSI tracker, you can open a problem record, and assign tasks to people. You must have a CSI lead to track these assignments, and in capital letters, you put follow up.
Yes, exactly. And I'll give you an example. When I was at State Farm, when we were first starting to do problem management, I took a bold step, and what I did was I recognized that there was an issue, and it didn't have anything to do with process, and it didn't have anything to do with technology. What it was is the volume of work that we were getting into service management was more than the team could handle. So I opened a problem record, and the cause of that problem record was not enough people. And what I did was I assigned that problem record to my manager. That made that he had to own that. He had to own that record, he had to own that problem. He then assigned it to his boss. So by having ownership, now you have that tracking mechanism, and many or most of you probably have some tool like a ServiceNow or a Surewell or HP where you can use this. Now, I got a lot of feedback, and people said, that's not how problem management should be used. No, this is exactly how problem management should be used. That's the whole point of problem management. I mean, we could do a whole webinar just on problem management around that, right? Is to assign whatever issue it is, and it's not always a technical issue. Sometimes it's a people issue. And again, that goes to those OCM things. And by having that tracking and having someone being able to follow up, as the question indicator, the comments indicated, this mechanism helps you. So use it that way. Now I'm going to get a whole bunch of feedback that people are like, hey, I assign crazy problem records to people, but see how it works, right?
Well, Brian has an interesting question for you, and he wants to know, how do you keep metrics from being gamed?
Oh, the brilliant question. Brilliant question. So many of you may have heard, lies, damn lies, and statistics. And the way that you do that is there's a very simple question, and what you do is you ask the question, is that a fact or an opinion, right? So when someone presents to you a fact, right, and says, or presents to you what they feel or they think is some metric, right, is that a fact or is that an opinion? Well, it's a fact. Okay, show me the data. Let's both go back and look at the data, right? Because what you are thinking the data is saying and what I think the data is saying may be two different things. And so what you have to do is go back to that pool of data, go back to the beginning, and if you think that these metrics are being gamed, they may be. So both of you go back, look at that data, come to a collaborative effort to decide what is that data really saying, and try to do a little people work, a little OCM here, where you're trying to interpret what is this person attempting to do by gaming the data. Are they trying to make themselves look better? Are they trying to cover up a mistake? Are they, what's the reasoning? What's the motivation or the method behind the madness, as it were? So I take both let's go back to the data, but also some people analysis steps around that.
And Mike, I'm going to jump in on that just because that's a hot point for me. As you know, a lot of times if a metric was designed a long time ago and it's still a metric that management believes we need to use and people are gaming the system, to Mike's point, it often just is this metric doesn't work anymore. And so we have to, pretend to do this. We actually do this procedure and this procedure, not that. And so the metrics can be, and that also is covered in Donna's book beautifully, but how to interview your own team and your own customers and users to learn why they're doing that. Because in my experience, there's often a very good reason.
Yes.
It's usually not just because somebody's lazy. It's usually because the metric it's too hard to get to, or the practitioners know it's not actually what we should be measuring anymore.
And I would add to that, Lisa, that it's probably an indicator that someone is using metrics to punish people. People game metrics because they feel that the metric is being used to punish them in some way, and they're trying to, what unions call work to rule, right? They're trying to play that game and make it look like they're meeting that. And that's the wrong use of metric. That's the metrics monster. So some of the techniques that I've given you, that the other attendees have given, use all of these techniques to go back and look and ask that question, right? Why are we looking at this? Why are we trying to figure this out? What good is it doing us? And if it's being used to punish people, let's stop doing that.
Well, on the flip side of that too is a lot of times metrics are used to incent people, in terms of salary, bonus, whatever. And so that could be why someone's gaming the system in terms of because it's going to help them get a better bonus. So that's misaligned with the whole, with what the corporate strategy should be.
Yeah, metrics are really about if the organization wins, we win. If we win as staff and employees, the organization wins. We're all in the same boat. Let's row in the same direction, and let's all go to the same place. That's my personal philosophy.
Well, and Greg mentioned, he said another key point is to be very careful about what you measure. It is a risk analysis of what behavior you are going to get if you measure something. And the example that he uses to demonstrate that is that we will measure service desk call time.
Right. Yeah, so that's a good point. And so anytime you're measuring things around a number of things, that's dangerous. That's the metrics monster. So if you say, I want to look at the number of calls someone takes, what I would do is one of two things. I'd either get rid of that metric and stop measuring it, or I would add the words with quality to it. Right? So number of calls handled with quality. It changes the metric completely and focuses it on the customer and on the quality and value you're bringing to the customer, as opposed to focusing on the person. Because when you look at the numbers of things, you're focusing on the person, you're not focusing on the value and the results. So either get rid of it or change it by adding the words with quality. Number of changes handled with quality. That is conformance to customer needs.
Right. That's a great idea, Mike. Jerry commented, you may want to set up a top, and she says top is tactical observation post actually observe how the team members are using the systems, look at the behaviors that are driving the metrics. So that's...
Yes. Yeah, so one of the 7 tools of quality is actually what's called a check sheet. And many people question why it is still one of those tools, because it's basically that kind of thing, right? A technical observation post or a direct observation, and you're watching someone and their behavior and how they're handling things. And people say, well, that's what we have all these tools for. Sometimes it's just good to do that. Sometimes it's actually just good to go back to a little bit of manual capability and get that people side of things, because as we've indicated, right, metrics are used incorrectly. They're used to punish or drive behavior instead of using to find results and how we can improve. And so you've got to kind of use that manual system to bring the people side of things in. And just gathering big data or getting dumps of data or reports doesn't tell you the people side of things.
Right. Jeff had a comment, and I think it looks like this may have come from the conversation that you were having with Lisa on the metrics. And he's asking, would you say that metrics have a lifespan? And if so, what's a typical duration?
Yes, they do have a lifespan. And it's not so much a time frame as a duration, but it's a point, like I said, if you look at the control chart, and this is why this is such a powerful tool, when you get to a point where you've kind of reduced the sigma on the upper and lower control limits, so it's getting closer and closer to the average, what you'll find is you don't have a whole lot of variation. As soon as you start to kind of see that you're really not getting a whole lot of things going outside of the norm, that is in between the two limits, that's the duration. Things are going the way that they're supposed to be going. It's not ignore that forever. It's take less focus on that. Let that just keep running. Just every once in a while, check on it to see if it's still, you know, doing what it's supposed to. But focus on things that are wildly out of control. And that's really the duration. Is when it's operating to a point where you're not seeing variation or a whole lot of variation, that's your duration. But you got to use the control chart to understand that.
Right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for all these great comments and great questions. This was quite a Q&A session, as Lisa promised it was going to be at the beginning of the webinar. That was great. I don't have any other questions for you, but I do have a lot of comments for you. So great presentation. Thank you so much, Mike. And that makes a lot of sense to me. Thank you very much. And from Donna, awesome job as always, Mike.
Thanks, Donna. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
And Jeff concurs. He said very educational.
I do have to say, though, Mike, I lost a bet. I bet someone that absolute certain you were going to work in the fact that the big product at CES last week was the toilet that Alexa can flush for you. So I have some fear.
You know some of my analogies that I tend. I'm trying to be careful about my analogies.
As you guys know, I'm looking at the list. There's so many people that are returning visitors to our webinars, and we appreciate that so much. And you know we have a no selling policy on our webinar. I am not selling. I'm just going to tell you about the newest class that we're rolling out because we're so super excited about it. It's a 2-day course, which is ITSM, or IT Service Management for DevOps, and it is specifically designed to help accelerate IT service management programs into organizations that, you know, typically DevOps has been starting on the development or application side. And the first class is March 22nd.